As you watch the regular season games, follow the stats, and cheer for spectacular goals, the true fate of Toronto Maple Leafs was being written behind the scenes. 3 moves, 3 decisions, 3 bets that could transform decades of frustration into a new era of glory, or repeat the cycle of disappointment that haunts this franchise. The first move has already happened, but its effects are only beginning to unfold. Scott Laughton arrived quietly at the deadline, without spotlights or flashy headlines. But he was the one who shut down the best opposing players, who provoked former teammates at the right moment, who did the dirty work that allowed Nylander's decisive goal. Now, with a whole offseason to settle in, he could be the defensive anchor Toronto has always needed. The second move might be happening right now. William Nylander, talented, charismatic, but carrying a $92 million cap hit, has become the center of speculation about a possible total rebuild. The question is no longer if the Leafs need to change, but how much they are willing to sacrifice to break the pattern of early playoff exits. And the third move is the riskiest, trading the future for present. Trevor Zegras for Easton Cowan. Immediate talent versus long-term promise. The bet that could determine whether Toronto finally escapes mediocrity or sinks even deeper into it. These aren't just off-season rumors. They are the pieces of a puzzle that Craig Berube and Brad Treliving are assembling to turn a good team into a championship contender. And you, the fan, are about to find out if Toronto will have the courage to make the tough choices that great franchises always make. Ready to discover how each of these decisions could rewrite the Maple Leafs' history? Despite still playing at a high level, represents a short-term. Update 1. You can watch every regular season game, follow the stats, the top scores, the highlights, and still miss the moment that changed course of playoffs. Because sometimes, what really makes a difference in a decisive series isn't on the scoreboard. It's in a line that shuts down the opponent, in a player who irritates a former teammate at just the right moment, in a block that comes right before the goal that closes a series. And that's where Scott Laughton comes in. When the Toronto Maple Leafs hit the market at the 2025 trade deadline, many fans expected a name that would set social media on fire. A scorer, a playmaker, a star. But one of the most important additions at deadline came with far less fanfare. Laughton wasn't a flashy name, but he was well known to those who truly understand the game. A veteran with nearly 13 years of loyalty to the Flyers, who is now trading everything: city, uniform, culture, pressure, to wear the blue and white. The transition was tough, and that was expected. Coach Craig Berube knew that better than anyone, and even so, he stood by him. It took him a little while to get used to the situation. Berube said in an interview with the Nasty Knuckles podcast, but there was something he saw, a kind of competitiveness, character, commitment, that goes far beyond points and assists. And if you're the type of fan who sees beyond the numbers, who feels the pulse of the playoffs in your chest, this channel is for you. Go ahead and leave a like, subscribe now, and comment below. Did you believe Laughton would have this kind of impact? His first games with the Leafs were quiet. 10 games without a point. A long drought for someone carrying the pressure of justifying a trade. But Laughton didn't let it get to him. And little by little, despite still playing at a high level, ice workers represents a Stephen Lawrence and Kaye Jarnkrok. Together, they formed what is called the checking line. They weren't responsible for deciding on offense, but they showed up whenever Berube needed to stop the opponent's best players. And in the playoffs against the Senators, that made all the difference. They were the ones who blocked shots, controlled neutral zones, and wore down Ottawa's top names. It was this line that prevented the rivals' offensive flow and helped create the play that led to William Nylander's decisive goal. None of this stands out on the official stat sheet, but it's the kind of detail coaches, players, and most attentive fans never forget. Berube praised Laughton clearly. He has game spirit. He defends well, is good on penalty kills, has personality in the locker room. He was very good for us. And when a championship coach says that, you pay attention. But Laughton's impact wasn't limited to the ice. In the locker room, he quickly earned the respect of his teammates, not through fiery speeches, but through consistency, through intensity in practice, through the willingness to do the dirty work, and also, of course, by understanding the psychology of the game, Against Ottawa, he had heated moments with his former Flyers teammate, Claude Giroux, and he didn't hesitate to provoke him. "You want to try to irritate him a little," Berube revealed, laughing as he recounted how Laughton described each provocation. "But it was good. When you play in the playoffs, everything changes." He was definitely trying to take him out of the game, and it worked. That is the essence of the playoffs. Rivalry, fire in the eyes, mental games. And Laughton delivered it all. The kind of player who may not shine in the best moments of the broadcast, but becomes indispensable when the season reaches its limit. And now comes the most intriguing part of the story, the offseason. For the first time since his arrival, Laughton will have entire months to settle in, build chemistry with the group, absorb Berube's system, and enter the season from the very first practice as an integral part of the roster. And that changes everything. Because if he was already impactful amid adaptation, imagine what he can do with time, calm, and a whole city embracing him as part of the team. Toronto is his home. And now, the Leafs are his new identity. With that, Berube can count on a more complete player, and maybe even more productive on offense, an area that was below his standard during the playoffs but tends to grow with confidence and stability. The next season will demand a lot from the Leafs. Rivals aren't standing still. The East is brutal, and lines like Laughton, Lawrence, and Jarnkrok will once again be tested to the limit. But now, unlike what we saw in March and April, Laughton already knows where he is. He already knows the opponents. He already understands the way to the crest. And he has made it clear that when the game tightens, he delivers. And I ask you, can Laughton become one of the defensive identity anchors for the Leafs? Or does the team still need to find something more to go further in the next postseason? Comment below. The discussion is just beginning. Update 2. In the high-stakes world of the NHL, decisions made off the ice can be just as decisive as the big moments on it. While the puck slides across the ice, executive choices shape the fate of entire franchises. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are living exactly this kind of moment now. With a talented roster that constantly falls short of expectations, the franchise faces a crossroads. At the center of this tension is William Nylander, one of the team's most skilled players and, at the same time, one of the most speculated names and potential reshuffling on the horizon. It's no secret that the Leafs have been trying to break the cycle of playoff disappointments. Year after year, even with a constellation of stars, the team seems to hit the same limitations. And it is precisely this repetition of patterns that led analyst Darren Pang to raise a bold but logical hypothesis. Maybe the only way for Toronto to make a real leap is by letting go of one of its most valuable assets, William Nylander. Pang's argument isn't based on guesswork or dramatization. It relies on a clear and strategic analysis of the reality Toronto faces. The roster, filled with offensive talent, lacks depth in key positions, and faces limitations imposed by the salary cap. And it is precisely because Nylander is so valuable both technically and financially that he becomes the most logical piece to use in a potential restructuring. His $92 million contract, although reflective of his talent, is an anchor on the Leafs' financial system. A possible trade could not only relieve that burden but also provide immediate returns in positions where the team clearly needs reinforcements. It's a bold proposal, but not unprecedented. In the modern NHL, big names move more often than you might think. And sometimes still playing at a high level, those decisions are exactly the catalyst needed to transform good teams into championship teams. Nylander represents one of those tough choices. He is the type of player who, while dazzling with his talent, demands total commitment from a franchise, technical, tactical, and financial. But why Nylander and not another name? The answer lies in balance. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, though also frequent targets of criticism, hold an even stronger technical and symbolic status within the core of the team. Matthews, especially, is seen as the absolute pillar of the Leafs' modern rebuild. John Tavares, the captain and veteran, has a contract that is harder to move. In this scenario, Nylander appears as a valuable piece that could realistically bring back a considerable package in exchange, whether in promising young players, draft picks, or players ready to contribute immediately. It's worth remembering that this idea is not impulsive. With every frustrating season, the Leafs management is backed into a corner, and the more the team fails to advance in the playoffs, the more urgent the need for deep adjustments becomes. If Nylander keeps delivering solid individual seasons, but cannot push the team beyond the early rounds, the question inevitably arises, is it worth keeping things as they are? The impact of a possible trade goes far beyond the ice. Nylander is one of the faces of the franchise. He represents a generation of fans who grew up dreaming of better days, and his departure will be felt emotionally. But professional sports are ruthless with sentimentality. Sometimes you have to give up something or someone you love to achieve something greater. And maybe that's the case now. With Nylander out of the equation, the Leafs could move with more flexibility. The franchise would gain salary cap space, as well as the possibility to diversify its roster. A well-executed trade could bring in a reliable defenseman for the top four, a solid center for the bottom six, or multiple strategic assets that breathe new life into Toronto's sports project. This would bring not only balance but also tactical variety, something the team has lacked, especially in the more physical and tight playoff matchups. From Nylander's own point of view, a change of scenery could also open new doors. He would certainly have a market in several NHL franchises that see him as the final piece for a title run. And while leaving Toronto might be emotionally difficult, a trade could represent a new phase in his career, an opportunity to prove, in a different setting, that he can be the deciding factor. The question is, what are the Leafs willing to sacrifice in the name of progress? Keeping Nylander is undoubtedly a way to preserve talent, but it could also be a way to preserve the status quo, the very same status quo that has led to early playoff exits and accumulated frustrations. Trading Nylander would therefore be a clear statement that the team is willing to truly change, to question its own convictions, to break out of the comfort zone. For the fans, the dilemma is equally uncomfortable. Watching a talented and charismatic player leave is never easy. But there is something even more painful than that, repeating the same choices while expecting different results. And in the case of the Leafs, repetition has come at a high cost. The future is open. The management needs to decide whether to keep the current core and hope for a different outcome, or take the brave step of reshaping its structure. The decision won't be simple. But in the NHL, the biggest rewards always go to those who dare to take risks. Whatever the choice, one thing is certain. The story of the Maple Leafs is about to enter a new chapter. And whether or not that chapter will have William Nylander as its protagonist is a question only time, and the front office behind the scenes can answer. Meanwhile, you, the fan, have a voice. What would you do if you were in management's shoes? Would you hold on to Nylander at any cost, or let him go in exchange for a new horizon for the Leafs? Leave your opinion in the comments. Update 3. What if the price to fix your present was giving up your future? This is the question that haunts the hearts of Toronto Maple Leafs fans. A bold trade has emerged as a concrete possibility. Trevor Zegras for Easton Cowan. 1-for-1. No protected picks, no safeguards. Just two bets. One already known, the other still in its infancy. And in the middle of it all, the desperate desire to change a narrative that has been repeating itself for years. Talent, hope, and frustration. Toronto is tired of promising. Now they want to win. But how far would you go for a victory? This is the kind of story that defines the fate of a franchise. Trevor Zegras, the prodigy who became an unfulfilled promise, maybe one step away from wearing blue and white. On the other side, Easton Cowan, the kid who carries a hope for a different future, may be shipped off before even having a real chance at Scotiabank Arena. And this is the point where the Maple Leafs find themselves, caught between the fear of repeating the past and the courage to rewrite their own future. It's not the first time Toronto faces this dilemma. In the 2000s, the franchise went through a long rebuilding period, accumulating draft picks and prospects that rarely materialized. In 2016, when they drafted Austin Matthews, hope seemed to have returned. But nearly a decade later, with several early playoff exits, the team still seems trapped in a cycle of wasted talent. Now, with Mitch Marner and John Tavares approaching the end of their contracts, patience is running thin. The championship window may be closing, and GM Brad Treliving, along with new coach Craig Berube, knows this offseason will be all or nothing. That's why this rumor, floated by Thomas Williams, despite still playing at a high level, has caused such a stir. According to him, the proposal is clear. Toronto acquires Trevor Zegras. Anaheim receives Easton Cowan. If this trade were to happen, it would represent a mindset shift. It would be a shout from management saying, the waiting is over. We're betting now. If you live and breathe this kind of sports drama, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment now. Would you have the courage to make this trade? Here, every rumor is a spark, and every decision carries the weight of an entire season. Be part of the community that lives a behind-the-scenes drama as if you were inside the locker room. Trevor Zegras was selected 9th overall in the 2019 draft and has since been one of the faces of the NHL's new generation. At only 23 years old, he has already produced highlight plays and gone viral for his creative skill. The type of player who turns games into a show. But last season was disappointing. Only 32 points in 57 games with 12 goals and 20 assists. Part of that was due to injuries, part due to the Ducks' inconsistency. He remains a mystery, a talent in need of guidance. Zegras is in the final year of a 3-season contract worth $17.25 million. After that, he will be a restricted free agent, meaning Toronto would still have control over his future, but would need to convince him to re-sign. And that's where the risk comes in. On the other side of the scale is Easton Cowan, selected 28th overall in 2023. At 20 years old, Cowan is the top prospect in the Leaf system, a versatile, smart forward, projected as a winger-center hybrid in the NHL. For the Ducks, still deep in rebuilding mode, Cowan fits perfectly. Young, cheap, moldable. A player who can grow alongside other prospects like Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish. According to Williams, this trade would be a box office hit precisely because it delivers what both teams want. Toronto gets a ready player, Anaheim gets a promising future. But what's at stake goes beyond statistics. Craig Berube, the newly arrived coach, has given statements that indicate belief in the current roster, but also a desire for evolution. I really like this team. I think it's a very good team, he said. But we need to learn to do things differently in new games and new moments. That sentence alone is a manifesto. Berube knows current talent is not enough. Something different is needed, and Zegras could be that something. Imagine him on a line with Nylander and Matthews, or replacing Marner if Toronto decides to trade him in the future. Zegras would bring a different offensive dynamism, a new identity for the attack. But it would also bring risk. Toronto would need to bet that he reaches the star level he has yet to achieve. And what about Cowan? Some believe that even at his peak, he will only be a complimentary player. A minor winger with not much speed, as Williams describes him. He would be great, hypothetically, but Toronto needs more certainty. And Zegras, even injured, even inconsistent, still offers more guarantees than Cowan. That is a dilemma, a calculated bet, or a leap into the dark. Toronto rarely makes decisions like this. The franchise's history is conservative, holding on to hope that the next generation will flourish. But great champions take risks. As Williams said, this is the move that championship teams make over and over. Toronto doesn't do this very often, or maybe never has. If this trade happens, it will mark a rupture, a new chapter, and a chance to change a story that repeats every year. Now I want to hear from you. Is Trevor Zegras worth the price of Easton Cowan? Would you risk the future in exchange for immediate talent? Or protect the next generation even if it costs another early playoff exit? Comment below. The Leafs offseason is just beginning, and this could be only the first move in a domino effect of changes. And if you want to follow every step of this script closely, the behind the scenes, the decisions, the dramas, subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and get ready. In the next video, we will talk about what Toronto will do if they lose Mitch Marner or John Tavares for free. See you there.